It was an ordinary night that quickly turned into the darkest tragedy that no one could have foreseen. A group of friends gathered to celebrate a birthday, moving from one busy bar to another, laughter echoing through the streets. The air was warm, the drinks flowed by the river, and the night was filled with the promise of carefree fun. She lingered at the bar, waiting for someone to give her a ride or keep her company. In a haze of alcohol and clouded judgment, a seemingly harmless stranger appeared. "Help me," was her last message, and now no one could reach her. In 2017, the case of Jenna Burley, a seemingly ordinary American student and aspiring blogger, shocked the whole country. At first, the search for Jenna was hopeful. Thousands of people banded together, convinced they could bring her home safely. But the truth, when it was finally revealed, left everyone in a daze. Jenna went to a party to celebrate a friend's birthday, but what was supposed to be a night of laughter and joy turned out to be her last day. It was the perfect storm, a mixture of intoxication, misplaced trust, and the seductive allure of a stranger who offered to help her find her way. It led to an unthinkable tragedy. So, who was Jenna Burley? Born on November 4, 1994 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Jenna was the second of 4 children in the Burley family. Her parents, Edward and Jacqueline, had met in college in the late 80s and fell in love, marrying in 1991. Their first child, Janelle, was born soon after, followed by Jenna, and later 2 younger brothers, Jeffrey and Jacob. The Burleys were the epitome of a hard-working, loving family. Jacqueline worked at a nursing home, while Edward helped rehabilitate patients at a hospital. Both were devoted to their children, raising them with a strong sense of community, love, and support. Jenna was a vibrant child, always full of energy and creativity. She had a natural charisma that drew people to her, making her popular among her peers. She performed well in school, took part in the school theater, and had a deep love for animals. The Burleys weren't wealthy, but they lived comfortably in a cozy house in the quiet neighborhood of Harleyville, Philadelphia. Jenna easily fit in with new groups of people, quickly forming friendships, and she often became the life of any gathering. As she grew older, Jenna developed a love for fashion and self-expression. In high school, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer, constantly experimenting with bold looks and styles. She wasn't afraid to stand out. Her bright makeup, ever-changing hair colors, and eclectic wardrobe choices made sure of that. One day, she'd look like a flower child straight out of a 60s hippie commune. The next, she might dress like a hardcore emo, embracing the darker aesthetic with ease. Her creative spirit and fearless attitude inspired many of her friends to embrace their uniqueness too. Jenna was also a frequent attendee at concerts and festivals, where she soaked up the energy of the crowds, using the experiences as fuel for her own inspiration. But as high school drew to a close, Jenna's passions began to shift. Her creative focus turned toward film. She no longer aspired to be a fashion designer, but a filmmaker. She enrolled in classes at a local film studio where her creativity truly blossomed. Whether it was creating storylines or bringing them to life through the lens of a camera, Jenna's talent was undeniable. Around this time, she also began sharing her artistic journey on social media. She posted regularly, offering glimpses into her life, her philosophical musings on societal issues, and her evolving creative projects. Her online presence quickly gained momentum. High school Jenna soon became something of an internet sensation. Thousands of people followed her, eager to see what this colorful, free-spirited girl would do next. She wasn't just a blogger. She was a beacon of self-expression, encouraging others to embrace their authentic selves in a world that often pushes conformity. In 2013, Jenna graduated from high school and enrolled at a prestigious college in sunny Florida, where she pursued media art and filmmaking. While diving deeper into her studies, she never stopped nurturing her online community. Her blog became a platform for her to share not only the joys and challenges of college life, but also her involvement in campus activities and her continued exploration of the creative arts. She shared stories of late-night study sessions, campus events, and the ever-changing world of parties and social gatherings with her friends. Jenna's future seemed as bright and limitless as her imagination. But beneath the surface of her vibrant world, danger lurked. Jenna Burley's journey took an unexpected and difficult turn, with a serious injury that dramatically altered the course of her life. On December 20, 2013, just after completing her first semester of college, Jenna returned home to Philadelphia to spend Christmas with her family. At the time, the city was already blanketed in snow, and the winter chill had settled in. Unfortunately, Jenna, still accustomed to the warm climate of Florida, was not dressed for the icy conditions. Wearing inappropriate shoes, she slipped and fell hard, severely injuring her ankle just as she was about to enter her family home. An X-ray revealed a double fracture with displacement, and the injury was more serious than anyone initially anticipated. Surgery was required to repair the damage, with the insertion of pins and plates to stabilize the bone. The road to recovery would be long and painful. Jenna was confined to a wheelchair for months, unable to put any weight on her foot, and eventually had to relearn how to walk through intensive daily physiotherapy. As if this wasn't enough, during her rehabilitation, she contracted pneumonia, a setback that complicated and significantly delayed her recovery. Jenna's academic life came to a halt as she was forced to take a leave of absence from school, a decision that devastated her. The vibrant student with big dreams now found herself trapped in a world of physical pain and isolation. However, Jenna found solace in her personal blog and social media platforms. She began sharing her experiences, posting daily videos and journal excerpts, which resonated deeply with her growing audience. Her candid discussions about her physical challenges and her emotional struggles helped her maintain a sense of connection with the outside world. Jenna's passions became even more prominent during this time. A fierce advocate for animal rights, she spoke out against zoos and dolphinariums, places that exploit animals for human entertainment. Her compassion extended beyond animals. She also addressed the plight of the homeless, highlighting the stark reality that while homelessness is difficult anywhere, in colder states like Pennsylvania, it could mean life or death. Jenna's activism wasn't just limited to raising awareness. Despite her limited mobility, she threw herself into charity work, organizing fundraising efforts to support homeless shelters and animal rescue organizations. She started making handmade jewelry from home, selling her creations online, and donating the proceeds to causes close to her heart. She encouraged her followers to do the same, urging them to donate clothes, supplies, and other unwanted items to those in need, often reminding them that what might be considered junk to one person could be a treasure for someone else. Through her blog, Jenna's voice grew stronger, and her message of empathy and compassion reached an ever-widening audience. Yet, behind the bright persona she projected online, Jenna was struggling. The long months of recovery had taken a toll on her mental health. What was initially a temporary setback had turned into an extended period of isolation and frustration, which led to a deep depression. By the fall of 2014, Jenna openly admitted that she was overwhelmed by her emotions and sought professional help. She began seeing a psychiatrist and used her platform to talk about her experiences with depression and mental health treatment. Her honesty struck a chord with her followers, many of whom were dealing with similar issues. Jenna's openness created a space where others felt safe to share their own stories and struggles, and her audience grew rapidly during this time. Despite the challenges, there were glimmers of light. In early 2015, Jenna and her family took a much-needed trip to California. Accompanied by her father and younger brother Jacob, she felt reinvigorated by the sun and ocean air. Jenna's social media posts during this time were filled with happiness, showcasing the close bond she shared with her family. The photographs from the trip radiated joy and showed that, despite everything, Jenna was determined to heal and move forward. By the time she fully recovered, Jenna made a significant life decision. Rather than return to Florida, she chose to stay closer to home. She transferred to Montgomery County Community College just outside of Philadelphia and moved back in with her parents. The idea of being close to her family brought her comfort, and this allowed her to continue her studies while also staying connected to her support system. At the same time, Jenna's blog continued to thrive, with her content evolving to include short videos on a variety of subjects, ranging from personal experiences to larger social issues she felt passionate about. In 2017, Jenna completed her bachelor's degree in the humanities, but she wasn't ready to stop there. Her love for film still burned brightly, so she made the decision to pursue a degree in film at Temple University's prestigious School of Film. Classes at the university began at the end of August, and Jenna Burley, excited to start a new chapter in her academic journey, was eager to dive into her coursework. On Wednesday, August 30, 2017, one of Jenna's close friends and classmates, Davis, was celebrating his birthday at a bar. It was an occasion Jenna couldn't miss. She was part of a tight-knit group of friends who had made plans to gather and enjoy the night together. The plan was for Jenna to stay overnight at Davis's apartment so they could attend their Thursday classes together. She let her parents know about her plans, ensuring they wouldn't worry. That evening, Jenna, Davis, and a handful of their friends started the night with laughter, drinks, and snapshots posted on social media to capture the memories. The group hopped from bar to bar, picking up other friends along the way. The mood was festive, with toasts to Davis and the carefree joy of youth filling the night. By 11:10 p.m., the group had grown larger, and the alcohol was flowing freely. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and by the time the clock struck midnight, they found themselves in a small, crowded sports bar. A surprise awaited Davis. Some of his friends had secretly arranged to kidnap him and take him to another venue to continue the celebration. Before leaving, Davis texted Jenna, asking her to let him know what time she would head to his apartment to stay over. Jenna stayed behind at the sports bar with the remaining group, and several sober friends offered her a ride home or invited her to crash at their place if she needed. However, Jenna reassured everyone that she was sticking to her original plan of going to Davis's apartment. Classes at the university began at the end of August, and Jenna Burley, excited to start a new chapter in her academic journey, was eager to dive into her coursework. On Wednesday, August 30, 2017, one of Jenna's close friends and classmates, Davis, was celebrating his birthday at a bar. It was an occasion Jenna couldn't miss. She was part of a tight-knit group of friends who had made plans to gather and enjoy the night together. The plan was for Jenna to stay overnight at Davis's apartment so they could attend their Thursday classes together. She let her parents know about her plans, ensuring they wouldn't worry. That evening, Jenna, Davis, and a handful of their friends started the night with laughter, drinks, and snapshots posted on social media to capture the memories. The group hopped from bar to bar, picking up other friends along the way. The mood was festive, with toasts to Davis and the carefree joy of youth filling the night. By 11:10 p.m., the group had grown larger, and the alcohol was flowing freely. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and by the time the clock struck midnight, they found themselves in a small, crowded sports bar. A surprise awaited Davis. Some of his friends had secretly arranged to kidnap him and take him to another venue to continue the celebration. Before leaving, Davis texted Jenna, asking her to let him know what time she would head to his apartment to stay over. Jenna stayed behind at the sports bar with the remaining group, and several sober friends offered her a ride home or invited her to crash at their place if she needed. However, Jenna reassured everyone that she was sticking to her original plan of going to Davis's apartment. As the night went on and the drinks continued to flow, friends began to filter out, and by 2 a.m., Jenna hadn't realized that all those who had offered her a place to stay or a ride had already left. Unbeknownst to her, a mix-up was quietly unfolding that would lead to tragic consequences. Jenna, confident that she still had a way home, remained at the bar. She said her goodbyes to a few remaining friends, believing she would be leaving with someone shortly. However, as the night wore on, Jenna found herself alone at the bar, sitting next to a group of strangers. Soon, even they departed, leaving Jenna by herself. The bar was closing at 3 a.m., and Jenna, realizing she was completely alone, began frantically texting Davis, asking if he could pick her up. But Davis had fallen asleep at home, his phone resting in another room. He didn't hear her messages or the 2 calls she made. Jenna reached out to a few other friends, but they were either too drunk to respond or their phones went unanswered. She didn't want to disturb her parents, and the idea of walking through the city alone at night seemed dangerous. When Davis woke up the following morning, he casually assumed Jenna had ended up staying with someone else. But after checking his phone, a wave of concern hit him. Jenna had sent him several messages the night before asking for a ride, with her last message containing only 2 chilling words. "Help me." Davis immediately tried calling her back, but her phone was turned off. At first, he thought there might still be a reasonable explanation. Maybe her phone died, and she had simply crashed at another friend's place. But as the day wore on, and Jenna failed to show up at class, Davis grew increasingly anxious. He started calling and visiting all the friends who had been with them the previous night, but no one had seen or heard from Jenna after she left the bar. By the afternoon, one of Jenna's friends contacted her parents to see if she had returned home. When they confirmed she hadn't, the friend explained what had happened the night before, and within half an hour, Edward and Jacqueline Burley were speeding toward campus, hearts pounding with worry. They spent the next several hours speaking with Jenna's friends, trying to piece together where she had last been seen and by whom. But there were no clear answers. Feeling the gravity of the situation, the Burleys went straight to the police, reporting their daughter missing and insisting on an immediate search. The urgency of Jenna's last text message to Davis asking for help only intensified the concern. The first place police checked were the university's academic buildings and dormitories, but there was no sign of Jenna. They then called local hospitals to see if anyone matching her description had been admitted, but there were no records of any women resembling Jenna being brought in over the past 24 hours. Everyone who had been with her the night before confirmed that the last place Jenna was seen was the small sports bar. She had been wearing blue jeans, a white t-shirt with a motivational slogan, and a light blue hoodie tied around her waist. Her distinctive hairstyle, long black hair braided into two pigtails, was something that friends and witnesses remembered clearly. As Jenna was an active and popular blogger, news of her disappearance spread quickly across social media. Thousands of her followers began posting pleas for information, urging anyone who had seen her to come forward. When police arrived at the bar, the bartender immediately recalled Jenna. She had stayed later than most of the crowd, and he remembered her sitting alone, visibly drunk and looking confused as she texted and called people. Her phone's last signal had been detected in the area around 2 a.m. Surveillance footage from the bar was reviewed, and the images painted a concerning picture. Jenna could be seen sitting at the bar, nursing a drink and sending messages. Around 1:30 a.m., a man approached her, struck up a conversation, and eventually bought her another drink. They talked for about 20 minutes before both left the bar together just before closing time. Both appeared to be unsteady on their feet, clearly intoxicated. When the bartender was shown the footage and asked if he recognized the man, he immediately identified him as a regular customer, Joshua Hupperters. The police had a name. And now, the hunt for Jenna's whereabouts became even more urgent. According to the bartender, Joshua Hupperters was a regular at the bar, a familiar face who visited nearly every day. That night, however, he seemed particularly focused on Jenna. He bought her several cocktails and was persistently inviting her to his apartment. The authorities soon learned that Joshua had recently turned 29 and had once attended Temple University, though he never graduated. He had taken an extended leave from school but never seemed to leave the university scene, frequently hanging out with students. Joshua lived just 5 minutes from the bar in a spacious apartment that he shared with his friend, Jack Miley. Investigators quickly found Joshua and began questioning him. He claimed that he had been too drunk to remember much from the previous evening, including any interactions with a girl from the bar. He initially agreed to cooperate, but soon after, his phone was turned off, raising suspicion. The police decided to visit Joshua's apartment themselves. When they arrived, only Jack Miley was home, and he let the detectives in without any resistance. Inside, the apartment was a disorganized mess, with clutter and disorder in every room. Jack admitted that both he and Joshua had gone to the sports bar the previous night, where they had been drinking heavily. Joshua had met a girl at the bar, and Jack, wanting to give his friend some privacy, went home and went straight to bed. Jack claimed he didn't know when Joshua returned or if he had come home alone. However, the next morning, something seemed off. Joshua had started cleaning the kitchen, something unusual for him. He appeared nervous and had fresh scratches on his face, along with a deep cut on his hand. When Jack asked about the injuries, Joshua casually explained that he had fallen into some bushes while drunk. Later that day, Joshua abruptly left the apartment, taking some of his belongings and leaving his phone behind, with no explanation of where he was going or when he'd return. The detectives were growing increasingly concerned. The apartment had a second exit leading to the backyard, where there were no security cameras. Near this back door, the police found a pair of men's sandals, stained with a brownish substance that looked suspiciously like dried blood. A roll of paper towels, also stained with something resembling blood, lay on a dresser. The kitchen smelled strongly of cleaning chemicals, and empty bottles of various cleaning products were scattered across the floor. The signs were troubling, and from that moment, Joshua Hupperters became the primary suspect in Jenna Burley's disappearance. As the investigation deepened, the police uncovered disturbing facts about Joshua's past. He was born and raised in Philadelphia and had experienced a traumatic childhood. His father had been violently killed when Joshua was young, leaving scars that followed him into adulthood. Joshua had enrolled at Temple University but never completed his degree, instead lingering in the academic world well into his late 20s. His record was marred by legal troubles, including charges related to distributing illegal substances, which he sold to students. He had also served time for burglary and had a history of violent altercations with women, some of which involved attempts to coerce them into unwanted sexual encounters. As these details came to light, it became evident that Joshua Hupperters could be extremely dangerous. And still, there was no word on Jenna's fate. The FBI was soon called in to assist with the investigation, and they quickly tracked Joshua's last phone signal to Wayne County, about 230 miles north of Philadelphia, near a lake. It turned out that Joshua's grandmother lived in the area, and there was a strong possibility he was hiding there. A police team was dispatched, and Joshua was apprehended at his grandmother's house. He didn't resist arrest and remained calm, though his demeanor raised suspicions. He claimed once again that he couldn't remember anything from the night Jenna disappeared, blaming his blackout on the heavy drinking. When asked about the fresh cuts and scratches on his body, he repeated the story about falling into bushes. He explained his sudden trip to his grandmother's as a spontaneous decision to visit family before classes started, though the police were quick to remind him that they knew he wasn't enrolled anywhere. At that, Joshua fell silent and requested a lawyer. Meanwhile, forensic experts were combing through Joshua's apartment in Philadelphia. They found traces of blood in various places, on the floor, the plumbing, and in the trash can. Though they were still awaiting the results to determine whose blood it was, the hope of finding Jenna alive was quickly fading. In Joshua's room, police discovered bags of illegal substances along with a staggering $220,000 in cash, further implicating him in a life far more sinister than just an average college dropout. As the search continued, detectives turned their attention to the backyard accessible through the apartment's second door. In a corner by the trash bins, which fortunately hadn't been emptied, they made a chilling discovery. Inside a black garbage bag, they found clothing that matched what Jenna had been wearing the night she disappeared. A light blue hoodie, a t-shirt with motivational slogans, a sports bra, and a black hair tie with a few dark strands of hair still attached. Bloodstains covered the items. The stark reality was sinking in. The chance of finding Jenna alive was dwindling rapidly. Despite the mounting evidence, Joshua remained tight-lipped, refusing to answer any more questions without his lawyer present. Detectives continued their search for Jenna's whereabouts, but the clues suggested the worst. Joshua Hupperters, a man with a violent past and a web of lies, had become the central figure in a case that was rapidly transforming from a missing person investigation to a search for justice. On September 2, an unexpected twist came in the case when Joshua Hupperter's stepfather contacted the police. He reported that on August 31, Joshua had visited his mother's house in Jenkintown, arriving by taxi and carrying a large, opaque plastic container that seemed unusually heavy. When asked about it, Joshua had casually explained that it contained books and some personal belongings, leaving it in the garage before departing early the next morning, again by taxi. The stepfather found the situation unsettling, especially since Joshua had requested the taxi driver not to log the trip in the app, offering to pay in cash. Given his stepson's troubled history, the man couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. After much deliberation, he decided to alert the authorities, doing so without informing his wife. By the time this report reached the police, Hupperters had already been apprehended, and the search of his grandmother's house had turned up no significant evidence. However, the fate of the mysterious plastic container was still unknown. Investigators feared the worst, suspecting the container might have been disposed of in a nearby lake, prompting discussions about involving divers. But the investigation soon took an unexpected and even darker turn. On September 3, Huppert's grandmother's husband, an older man who lived nearby, decided to check on a small, seldom-used shed located far from the house, nearly hidden by overgrown bushes and trees. The shed, which had been long forgotten, stored an old boat and fishing gear. When the man arrived, he noticed that the lock on the shed's door had been broken. Fearing that thieves had ransacked the place, he entered, expecting to find things missing. Instead, everything appeared to be in order, except for one thing: a large plastic container that hadn't been there before. With a growing sense of dread, he opened the container. What he found inside made him recoil in horror: a severely mutilated naked body, curled up in the tight confines of the plastic tub. He immediately called the police, and within hours, it became clear that the remains belonged to Jenna Burley. The police summoned Jenna's parents for identification, and the confirmation of their worst nightmare sent shockwaves through the family. Jenna's mother fainted upon seeing the body, while her father nearly suffered a heart attack, overwhelmed by the brutal reality they had hoped never to face. As the investigation deepened, the authorities pieced together what had happened that fateful night. Through witness statements and surveillance footage, it was revealed that Joshua had taken advantage of Jenna's already intoxicated state, plying her with more alcohol before luring her to his apartment. Once inside, it became clear that Jenna had realized the danger she was in. She frantically sent several messages to her friends, asking for help, but none of them responded in time. At some point, Joshua turned violent. Jenna fought back with all her strength, managing to scratch him and even cut his hand with a kitchen knife she had grabbed in her desperate struggle. But Huppert's overpowered her, disarming her and repeatedly slamming her head against the floor until she was incapacitated. He then sexually assaulted her before strangling her to death with his bare hands. Once the horrific act was done, Huppert's attempted to cover his tracks. He found a large plastic container in the storage room and placed Jenna's lifeless body inside. He cleaned up the crime scene as best as he could, wiping down surfaces and disposing of bloodied paper towels. But forensic evidence would later betray his efforts. The autopsy revealed that Jenna's cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation, confirming she had been strangled. Her body showed signs of severe trauma: bruises, abrasions, bite marks, and a traumatic brain injury from the repeated blows to her head. Additionally, evidence of sexual assault was clear. The blood found on Joshua's shoes, paper towels, and throughout the apartment was Jenna's, and the hair tie found in the trash, along with the blood-stained clothing, all pointed directly to Joshua's guilt. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Huppert's refused to plead guilty or accept a deal. He denied responsibility, insisting on going to trial, even though his involvement in the crime was indisputable. Further investigation revealed that Huppert's had been planning to flee. A search of his grandmother's house uncovered a backpack filled with cash, personal documents, and essentials, indicating that he was preparing to go on the run when police caught up to him. The trial began in the spring of 2019, a year and a half after the crime. As the proceedings unfolded, Huppert's defense team tried a desperate and appalling tactic. They shifted the blame onto Jenna, suggesting she had voluntarily gone to Joshua's apartment and provoked him. The defense's claims sparked outrage in the courtroom, as both the prosecution and the public saw through the attempt to smear Jenna's character. The evidence was overwhelming, and after 9 days of testimony and deliberation, the jury found Joshua Huppert's guilty on all counts. The verdict was swift, and Huppert's was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after 60 years. The case also sent shockwaves through the local community, serving as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking even in seemingly familiar places.
New this hour, investigators tell us they also plan to commit more murders.
This is a story that will leave no one indifferent. This is a story that will make your blood run cold. In a small, quiet town, where everyone knew everyone, no one could have predicted the horrors that would unfold there. What began as a seemingly innocuous day turned into a chilling tale of betrayal, greed, and violence. The perpetrators' motives were as twisted as their methods, fueled by a strange mixture of love, rage, resentment, and a thirst for freedom. The first victims were chosen not for wealth or power, but because they simply stood in the way. Their crimes were horrific and insidious, leaving a trail of destruction that stained everything they touched. The police found scenes more horrific and shocking than they had ever seen. However, what shocked the police most was not only the cruelty, violence, or inhumanity, but also the complete lack of remorse on the part of one of the criminals. In the spring of 2017, a series of shockingly brutal crimes shattered the tranquility of Lawrenceville, a quiet town nestled in the heart of Georgia. These gruesome events claimed the lives of 2 individuals and left 4 others gravely injured, hovering on the brink of death. Among the victims was an elderly couple who endured unimaginable torture and were ultimately beaten to death in a horrific act of violence motivated by greed. 2 college students, severely wounded in the spree, survived by sheer luck. The perpetrators of this chilling crime wave were 2 young lovers, 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorga and 19-year-old Johnny Ryder. Their dark love story quickly captured the media's attention, drawing comparisons to the tragic romance of Romeo and Juliet. However, in a disturbing turn of events, their crime spree was even more horrific as their intended targets were members of their own families, people who once loved and cared for them. In a twisted plot, they sought to get rid of everyone close to them. Their romance began innocently enough, with a chance meeting in late January 2017 through mutual friends. Cassandra, 17 at the time, was still a student, while Johnny, just 19, was already nursing the emotional scars of a failed marriage. His brief marriage had been forced by circumstance when his underage girlfriend became pregnant. However, the pregnancy tragically ended early, and the marriage quickly fell apart. When Johnny first laid eyes on Cassandra, he was mesmerized, falling deeply and madly in love with her from the very first moment. Despite her petite, almost angelic appearance, Cassandra was a whirlwind of fierce, untamed energy. She had previously dedicated herself to intense physical pursuits, including competitive tango, taekwondo, and wushu. She was no stranger to martial arts competitions and showed promise in these fields. But her commitment waned as emotional turmoil took hold. In truth, it wasn't just emotional struggles that pulled her away from her athletic ambitions. She had become more drawn to the party scene, developing habits and behaviors that were in stark contrast to the disciplined lifestyle required for her sports. Her striking beauty and magnetic personality allowed her to captivate those around her, particularly the boys who were helplessly drawn into her orbit. Some now question whether Cassandra truly loved Johnny, or if she merely manipulated him to fulfill her own sinister desires. Yet one thing was clear. Johnny was utterly enthralled by her, blindly devoted and willing to do anything she asked, convinced that he had found his one true love and soulmate. At the time, Johnny was living at home with his mother and 2 sisters, while Cassandra lived with her doting grandparents, who cherished their only granddaughter. Not long after their fateful meeting, the young couple's passion for one another ignited into a full-blown affair. Eager to solidify their bond, they introduced each other to their respective families, hoping for acceptance and understanding. However, their families were far from approving. This rejection seemed to fuel a deep resentment within the couple, sparking a dangerous rage that would soon turn deadly. It's widely believed that neither Cassandra nor Johnny would have committed such heinous crimes on their own. But together, they became a deadly combination. Johnny, easily influenced and vulnerable to manipulation, was drawn into Cassandra's dark orbit. She became the mastermind behind the horrific events that followed, planting seeds of terrifying ideas that Johnny would carry out without hesitation. Cassandra Bjorg was born on January 18, 2000 in Peachtree Corners, Gwinnett County, Georgia. Raised by her single mother, Amanda Sterling, Cassandra never knew her biological father and had no contact with him throughout her life. Amanda, more absorbed in her own personal affairs than in parenting, struggled to provide the guidance and support her daughter desperately needed. This lack of stability at home contributed to Cassandra's early behavioral problems, and by a young age, she began exhibiting signs of aggression and defiance. When Cassandra turned 15, her mother married a man named Stephen. Unfortunately, this new chapter in their lives introduced further turmoil. Stephen began to show an unhealthy interest in Cassandra, making inappropriate advances toward her. Desperate for help, Cassandra confided in her mother, but Amanda dismissed her daughter's claims as fabrications. By then, Cassandra's reputation as a liar and troublemaker had taken root, and Amanda, believing her daughter was simply seeking attention, refused to believe her. Feeling abandoned by her mother, Cassandra turned to her grandparents, Wendy and Randall Bjorg, for help. Concerned for her well-being, Wendy and Randall took immediate action and invited Cassandra to live with them. In October 2015, Cassandra moved into their spacious two-story home in Lawrenceville, hoping for a fresh start. Her grandparents, who adored their only granddaughter, provided her with everything she needed, from a private room to unwavering emotional support. They believed that with enough love and care, Cassandra's troubling behavior would improve, and she would find her way back to a healthier path. However, Cassandra quickly took advantage of her grandparents' generosity. Instead of embracing the opportunity for a fresh start, she abandoned the sports and extracurricular activities she had once been involved in and began skipping school. She fell in with a bad crowd, frequently ran away from home, and started using alcohol and prohibited substances. Her behavior became increasingly volatile. Cassandra began stealing money from her grandparents, using it to fund her destructive habits. On one occasion, when her grandmother refused to give her the money she demanded, Cassandra lashed out, threatening her grandmother's life in a moment of blind rage. Between October 2015 and March 2017, Cassandra's escalating behavior resulted in more than 30 police calls from the Bjorga family. She would disappear for days, engage in physical altercations, steal from the house, and become uncontrollably aggressive under the influence of substances. Despite their efforts, her grandparents were unable to manage her erratic behavior. Still, Wendy and Randall held on to the hope that their granddaughter could be rehabilitated. They couldn't bring themselves to send her back to her mother or have her placed in juvenile detention, as they feared it would permanently ruin her life. Cassandra's descent into chaos accelerated after she met Johnny Ryder, a 19-year-old with a similarly troubled past. Their relationship only fueled Cassandra's instability, and soon, she tried to move Johnny into her grandparents' home. Wendy and Randall, already overwhelmed by their granddaughter's behavior, refused to allow it. This decision further strained their relationship with Cassandra, who became more defiant and reckless. The situation repeated itself when Johnny attempted to move Cassandra into his family's home, but his mother and sisters quickly shut down the idea and kicked the couple out. It was at this point that Cassandra and Johnny, feeling cornered and rejected by their families, decided to take matters into their own hands. They developed a dark and violent plan. Anyone who stood in the way of their relationship would be eliminated. The first step in their twisted scheme was to murder Cassandra's grandparents, steal their savings, and then target Johnny's family in a similar manner. Afterward, they intended to confront Cassandra's mother and stepfather, and once all obstacles were removed, they planned to flee to Florida with whatever money they could gather from their victims' homes. Cassandra knew her grandparents kept a significant amount of cash in their home, hidden in a safe on the second floor. However, after noticing that money had been disappearing and suspecting Cassandra of stealing, Wendy and Randall changed the combination to the safe, ensuring their granddaughter no longer had access to their funds. At the time, Wendy was 63 years old, and Randall had recently turned 65. The couple had been married for over 40 years and had built a life filled with love, stability, and comfort. They had raised a daughter, achieved their dream of owning a beautiful home, and looked forward to growing old together. They occupied 2 adjacent bedrooms on the second floor, each with its own bathroom, and despite Cassandra's increasingly erratic behavior, they held on to the belief that she could be saved. However, their unwavering belief in their granddaughter would prove fatal. On that fateful day, Cassandra and Johnny entered the home with murder on their minds. Armed with knowledge of where the cash was hidden but unable to access it without the safe's combination, they turned their frustrations into violence. The elderly couple, who had done nothing but love and care for Cassandra, became victims of the very person they had tried so hard to help. Their dream of growing old together was tragically cut short by the brutal actions of their granddaughter and her accomplice. Wendy and Randall had clung to the hope that they could change Cassandra's path. But in the end, their love and devotion were met with betrayal of the most unimaginable kind. Their desire to protect Cassandra from the harsh consequences of her actions had cost them their lives. What began as a plea for help from a troubled teenager ended in a horrific crime that left their once peaceful home drenched in tragedy. On the night of April 3, 2017, the quiet stillness of Wendy and Randall Bjorga's home was shattered by a horrific betrayal. The elderly couple had already gone to bed, unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. Cassandra Bjorga, their own granddaughter, led her boyfriend Johnny Ryder into the house. Armed with kitchen knives and baseball bats, the pair climbed the stairs to the second floor with sinister intent. Cassandra quietly entered her grandmother's room and stood by her bed while Johnny approached Randall and began striking him violently with the baseball bat. The elderly man, disoriented and frightened, didn't immediately understand what was happening. He was too stunned to defend himself as Johnny leapt onto the bed and continued the merciless assault, standing on his victim as he rained down blow after blow. Meanwhile, Wendy awoke to the dull, sickening thuds coming from the next room. As she tried to make sense of the sounds, she realized her granddaughter was standing beside her bed. Before Wendy could react, Cassandra stabbed her in the shoulder. Wendy, though in shock, tried to fight back. Her hands bore deep defensive cuts, but she was no match for her granddaughter's brutality. Cassandra dragged her by the hair into Randall's room, where Johnny was still viciously attacking her husband. Together, the young couple bound the elderly pair with tape and continued the assault, demanding the combination to the safe. Johnny pressed a knife to Randall's throat, threatening to kill him if they didn't comply. Yet even in the face of such cruelty, Wendy and Randall clung to the hope that their granddaughter wouldn't go through with her threats, believing she couldn't possibly kill her own family. But their hope was in vain. At Cassandra's command, Johnny began stabbing Randall in the stomach, showing no hesitation. Wendy, in a desperate plea for mercy, gave them the code to the safe. Cassandra, triumphant, ran to her grandmother's room, quickly opening the safe and finding thick envelopes stuffed with cash. She returned to Johnny, waving the money in the air, her excitement clear. But their greed wasn't satisfied with just the contents of the safe. The torture continued. Cassandra and Johnny, hungry for more, demanded the passwords to their bank cards, beating the elderly couple further to get what they wanted. It was during these final moments that Wendy and Randall seemed to realize they wouldn't be spared. They began saying their goodbyes, telling each other how much they loved one another, words that should have moved anyone with a conscience. But Cassandra later recounted this during her interrogation, coldly stating that the exchange of affection had amused her. Once they had all the information they needed, the young couple executed their final brutal act. They first killed Randall, stabbing him in the neck in front of Wendy, forcing her to watch as her husband died. Then, dragging Wendy into the bathroom, they continued their grisly work. Cassandra, in a display of twisted cruelty, bludgeoned her own grandmother with a baseball bat, hitting her over and over. At one point, frustrated that Wendy was still alive, Cassandra complained to Johnny that her grandmother wouldn't die. Johnny, eager to end it, then slit Wendy's throat, ensuring she had no chance of survival. After the murders, Cassandra and Johnny didn't flee the scene. Instead, they stayed in the house, living alongside the decomposing bodies of Wendy and Randall on the second floor. The stolen money gave them the means to indulge in their wildest fantasies. They bought alcohol, drugs, and anything else they desired, living in a haze of hedonism while the corpses of Cassandra's grandparents rotted upstairs. In their interrogations, the couple would later admit they wanted to try everything, and the money they stole allowed them to do just that. The thrill of their crime and the indulgence that followed seemed to give them no remorse. As days passed, Wendy's sister grew concerned. It had been several days since she had heard from Wendy, and despite sending text messages, there was no direct contact. The text messages she received were odd, especially since Wendy had poor eyesight and rarely used her phone for texting. The messages insisted everything was fine and reassured her not to worry, but they only heightened her anxiety. On April 5th, after repeated failed attempts to reach the Bjorges, she called the police and requested a welfare check at their home. A patrol officer was sent to the house. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place. There were no signs of forced entry, the mail had been collected, and neighbors mentioned seeing the couple's car leaving for downtown that morning. The officer knocked on the door, but no one answered. Without a warrant, he had no authority to enter the home. Satisfied that everything appeared normal on the surface, the officer left, reporting that nothing suspicious had been found. Little did he know that inside the house, the bodies of Wendy and Randall Bjorga lay upstairs, while Cassandra and Johnny continued their macabre celebration amidst the spoils of their unspeakable crime. The horror wouldn't come to light until later, when further investigation would reveal the true extent of the brutality and betrayal that had unfolded behind closed doors. The young couple, reveling in the aftermath of their brutal crime, used the victim's car as their getaway vehicle, but not to flee, yet. Instead, they indulged in daily trips to buy food, alcohol, and other luxuries. They ordered takeout from restaurants, filling the house with boxes of uneaten spoiled food that littered every surface. Tables, windowsills, even the floor. The house, once a place of love and care, quickly turned into a scene of chaos and waste. Their insatiable greed meant that they soon ran out of cash, so they began withdrawing money from Wendy's bank card. But Randall's wallet, with its additional cards, remained elusive. A week after the murders, with their funds dwindling and reality closing in, Cassandra and Johnny concocted a wild plan. They decided to throw a party at the house, luring friends with the promise of money, alcohol, and illegal substances. However, they faced a gruesome obstacle. The decomposing bodies upstairs were emitting a stench so foul that it would be impossible to hide. Desperate, Johnny rummaged through the garage and found 2 cans of construction sealant. But before sealing the doors, they first had to mask the smell. They bought several liters of bleach from a hardware store and poured it over the bodies, a futile attempt to disinfect the scene. Then Johnny meticulously sealed every crack around the bathroom and bedroom doors, hoping the smell wouldn't escape. Despite their efforts, the odor still lingered, seeping through the cracks. When they called their friends to invite them, Cassandra spun a lie, claiming her grandparents had gone out of town, leaving her with plenty of money for a party. Yet her story raised eyebrows. Most of their friends were aware of how often Wendy and Randall had called the police to manage Cassandra's behavior, and the idea of the elderly couple leaving her alone seemed too far-fetched. In the end, only a handful of troubled teens showed up, lured by the promise of illegal substances and alcohol. Even in their intoxicated state, the guests complained about the overwhelming stench, which Cassandra casually blamed on a clogged sewer. The party was a shadow of what they had hoped for, a small gathering amidst the filth and decay of their crime. By the next day, Cassandra and Johnny realized they couldn't stay in the house any longer. The smell was unbearable, and the funds were nearly gone. It was time to leave, but they needed more money to execute their escape. This meant another gruesome plan, one that involved more of their relatives losing their lives. On Friday, April 8, 2017, the couple set their sights on Johnny's family home, planning to rob and murder his mother and sisters. Johnny, knowing their schedules well, used his keys to break in during the morning hours when the house was empty. They ransacked the place, finding some cash and valuables to tide them over. They armed themselves with baseball bats and bear spray, a highly potent aerosol designed to repel aggressive bears. Bear spray contains a powerful mix of tear and irritant substances that can cause severe burns, intense pain, and even be lethal to humans. Their plan was carefully thought out. They intended to attack Johnny's family members one by one as they returned home and eliminate any witnesses before fleeing. By the time anyone noticed his mother or sisters were missing, they hoped to have several days' head start. Johnny's younger sister, Melissa, was the first to come home from university that afternoon. However, to their dismay, she wasn't alone. Her boyfriend had come over to spend time with her while the house was empty. The unexpected presence of a second person threw a wrench in their plans. But the couple decided to press on, adding Melissa's boyfriend to their list of victims. As soon as the pair entered the house, they were alarmed by the mess and signs of a break-in. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Melissa ran to the phone to call the police, but before she could dial, the room filled with an acrid, burning orange cloud. The perpetrators had unleashed the bear spray, filling the air with a choking fog. Eyes stinging and throats burning, Melissa and her boyfriend struggled to see through the haze when Cassandra and Johnny appeared, armed with bats. The attackers swung their weapons wildly, but Melissa and her boyfriend fought back with unexpected ferocity. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Cassandra and Johnny, overwhelmed by the strength of the bear spray themselves, began coughing uncontrollably, struggling to maintain their assault. In the chaos of the fight, the front door suddenly swung open, and Johnny's mother walked in, returning from work earlier than usual. She was horrified by the scene, her son and his girlfriend attacking her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, who were struggling to breathe through the burning chemicals. Johnny's mother screamed and immediately called 911. Panicked, Cassandra and Johnny bolted, fleeing through the back door. In their rush, Cassandra dropped the keys to the stolen car they had been using, leaving behind critical evidence. Fortunately for them, Johnny had grabbed spare keys to his mother's car during the robbery, which they used to escape. However, they had abandoned the most damning piece of evidence, the vehicle registered to the late Randall Bjorga. The botched attack at the Ryder home was a pivotal moment. While the couple had hoped to carry out their deadly plan without a hitch, the arrival of an unexpected guest and their inability to control the situation forced them to flee before finishing what they had started. The couple was caught off guard when Melissa arrived home with her boyfriend. Their plan had been to silently attack one person at a time, but with two strong and alert individuals present, the situation became much more dangerous. Though the criminals immediately decided they had to eliminate this unexpected witness, their plan quickly fell apart. They overestimated their strength and severely underestimated the potency of the bear spray, which backfired on them. The attempted attack not only saved Johnny's family from a gruesome fate, but also marked the beginning of the end for the couple's murderous spree. Despite the vicious attack, both Melissa and her boyfriend survived, though they were hospitalized with varying degrees of injuries and chemical burns. When law enforcement arrived at the scene, one detail immediately stood out: the abandoned car in the backyard. The car didn't belong to the Ryder family, and when the police ran the license plates, they discovered it was registered to Randall and Wendy Bjorga. This revelation was disturbing because the police had already been called to the Bjorga's home earlier in the week for a welfare check. At that time, officers had knocked on the door but left when there was no response, assuming nothing was amiss. Now suspicious, the officers headed straight to the Bjorga residence. After repeated unsuccessful attempts to make contact, they forced the door open. The moment they entered, the unmistakable stench of decay hit them. It was coming from upstairs. In one of the bedrooms, they found bloodstains on the bed and floor, and the closet door was ajar, revealing an empty safe. However, the most disturbing discovery was still to come. The door to the master bedroom was sealed shut with construction adhesive, requiring the officers to cut through it with special tools. When they finally gained access, they were greeted with a nightmarish scene. On the floor lay the decomposing body of Randall Bjorga, his hands bound behind his back, clear signs of torture etched into his skin. Across the hall, the bathroom door had also been sealed. It took more time to break through, but inside, they found the remains of Wendy Bjorga, Her body bore the marks of a savage beating, and her throat had been viciously slit. The house itself was a disaster zone, filled with piles of trash, boxes, and spoiled takeout food, which had been left to rot. Empty alcohol bottles were scattered everywhere, and the sink overflowed with dirty dishes. The police, familiar with the Bjorga household, immediately connected the dots. Over the past year and a half, they had responded to multiple calls from Randall and Wendy regarding their troubled granddaughter, Cassandra, who often ran away, displayed aggressive behavior, and frequently got into trouble. Now she was the prime suspect in their brutal murders. As soon as Melissa and her boyfriend recovered enough to speak with the police, they pointed the finger at Cassandra, identifying her as the likely mastermind of the attack. They also mentioned Johnny, her boyfriend, who had been infatuated with her and would probably follow her lead in any crime. With their identities confirmed, Cassandra and Johnny were officially declared fugitives. The police quickly issued a warrant for their arrest, and an alert went out for the car they had escaped in. After fleeing the Ryder home, the pair stopped at a store to buy 5 liters of milk. The burning from the bear spray was excruciating, and they were desperate to wash it off. The milk helped ease the pain, but the couple knew they couldn't stay on the run forever without a plan. Johnny remembered his high school best friend Jason, who had been like a brother to him during their senior year. Though they had drifted apart after graduation, Johnny thought Jason might still be someone they could turn to for help. The criminals showed up at Jason's apartment unannounced. He was startled when his former classmate appeared at his door, looking disheveled and accompanied by a strange girl. Their appearance was alarming, but Johnny spun a sympathetic tale. He claimed that he and Cassandra had been thrown out after a heated argument with his mother, who didn't approve of his girlfriend. According to Johnny, things escalated when his mother sprayed them with pepper spray and forced them to leave with nothing. He begged Jason for a place to clean up and rest, as they had nowhere else to go. Jason and his mother, both kind-hearted people, felt sorry for the distressed couple. They allowed them to use the bathroom to shower, gave them clean clothes, and even prepared a meal for them. Grateful for the hospitality, Johnny and Cassandra accepted an invitation to spend the night. The next morning, Jason's mother made breakfast, serving coffee and chatting politely with the guests. She asked if there was anything more she could do to help, unaware of the dangerous criminals sitting at her kitchen table. But the peaceful morning wouldn't last long. As they finished their breakfast, the unmistakable sound of police sirens filled the air outside. Jason glanced out the window, puzzled, only to see several police cars pulling up directly outside the building. His confusion turned to alarm when a megaphone crackled to life, and officers began calling out Johnny and Cassandra's names, ordering them to surrender. At that moment, the couple knew their time was up. The law had finally caught up with them. Jason and his mother were paralyzed with shock as the reality of the situation sank in. Johnny, now gripping a large kitchen knife, coldly thanked them for their kindness and then, with an eerie calm, ordered them to leave the apartment immediately. Terrified and unsure of what the desperate couple might do next, Jason and his mother bolted for the door. Meanwhile, Johnny and Cassandra scrambled to barricade themselves inside the apartment. They had no intention of surrendering, believing their only escape was to take their lives together. Johnny and Cassandra knew they didn't have much time. A SWAT team would be breaking through the door any moment, and they realized they couldn't hold out for long. Deciding that a dramatic end was the only option, they retreated to the bathroom, knife in hand. There, in a final act of desperation, they inflicted several deep cuts on their wrists, hoping to bleed out quickly. As Johnny began to lose consciousness, he took out his phone and recorded a voice message for his mother. His voice, weak and filled with regret, apologized for everything. He expressed love for his family, lamenting the hurt he had caused, and said he was about to die in the arms of his beloved Cassandra. This would be his final message to the world. Cassandra, however, made no such attempts to reach out to anyone. She remained silent, never sending a message to friends or family. Her focus seemed entirely on herself. When the police finally broke down the door and entered the apartment, they found the young couple slumped together on the bathroom floor, unconscious and lying in each other's arms, surrounded by a massive pool of blood. They were barely alive, but alive nonetheless. Paramedics rushed in to provide immediate medical care, stabilizing them before rushing them to the hospital. As soon as Johnny regained consciousness in the hospital, his first words were not of remorse, but concern for Cassandra, asking repeatedly if she was okay. Once stabilized, he was quick to confess his involvement in the crimes, expressing sorrow for what he had done. His confessions seemed sincere. They were filled with regret for the lives he had taken and the people he had hurt. Cassandra, on the other hand, adopted a completely different approach. She painted herself as a victim of her boyfriend's influence, claiming she had been dragged into everything against her will. She blamed her depression and anger toward life for her actions, using her mental health as a crutch. But as she recounted the events in more detail, she slipped up, accidentally admitting that she had long harbored a desire to see her grandparents dead. Her behavior during interrogations shocked even the most seasoned detectives. She alternated between childish whining about the hospital food and flirtatious attempts to manipulate the officers. When she finally agreed to talk, it was only after they brought her fast food from her favorite restaurant. What she said next froze the blood in the veins of the police. When asked why she had killed her grandparents, Cassandra replied with chilling indifference, "They had lived long enough." She explained that they were a nuisance to her, interfering with her freedom, making her go to school, and hiding money she felt entitled to. Cassandra displayed no remorse for taking the lives of the only people who had ever truly cared for her. The only regret she expressed was that she hadn't been able to find her grandfather's bank card. When detectives revealed that her grandfather had hidden his wallet under his pillow out of fear she would steal it, Cassandra laughed and said, "Grandpa was always damn smart." The couple also confessed to planning the murders of Johnny's family. They wanted revenge on the Riders for not accepting Cassandra and for trying to break up the couple, thinking Cassandra was a bad influence. They also planned to rob the family, coldly justifying their actions by stating, "Dead people don't need money." Afterward, they intended to kill Cassandra's mother and stepfather, driven by a desire to punish them for how they had mistreated her. Their ultimate plan was to flee to Florida, where they dreamed of living by the ocean, spending the stolen money, and enjoying a carefree life. Months later, Johnny and Cassandra faced each other once more, but this time in the courtroom. The passion and loyalty that had once defined their relationship had evaporated. Instead, they spent most of the trial blaming each other, arguing, and hurling insults across the courtroom. Whatever twisted bond had existed between them had shattered under the weight of their crimes. Both ultimately pleaded guilty to all charges, including the murders of Cassandra's grandparents, the attack on Melissa and her boyfriend, and the robberies they had committed. The court found Cassandra Bjorga and Johnny Ryder guilty on all counts. Each was sentenced to 2 life sentences, with the possibility of parole after 60 years. In the aftermath, Johnny showed genuine remorse, standing up in court to apologize to everyone he had wronged, his voice trembling as he took full responsibility for the horror he had helped unleash. Cassandra, in stark contrast, remained defiant until the very end. When given the chance to speak, she coldly said, "I have nothing to apologize for." With that, the case of the 2 young criminals came to a close, but the damage they had done would haunt their victims and their families for a lifetime. On what should have been the happiest day of her life, the bride, adorned in a flawless white gown, stood surrounded by friends and family, steps from the aisle. The air was filled with anticipation and joy as her loved ones celebrated the union that was about to take place. However, just as the final preparations were being made, a dark shadow approached. Within moments, the scene of love and happiness turned into a nightmare. The guests, shocked and bewildered, could barely comprehend what had just happened. This was no accident. Video footage captured every horrific detail, revealing a deliberate and calculated act of violence. The ensuing trial became a media sensation, warping public perception with dramatic claims and counterclaims. Often, the people we believe we know best Those we live with, share our lives and hearts with, turn out to be complete strangers. The most terrifying truth emerges when relationships crumble, and someone we once loved reveals their darkest self, channeling anger and hatred in ways unimaginable. Such was the tragic fate of a woman whose only crime was seeking love and happiness, Gladys Ricart. Gladys's story was one of triumph over adversity, of unshakable will in the face of overwhelming odds. But beneath her success lay scars from the past that shaped her views on love. Cautious and guarded, she did not rush into relationships. It wasn't until much later in life, when she had firmly established herself as a professional and as a mother, that she met a man who seemed to be everything she had hoped for. He appeared kind, attentive, and shared her immigrant experience. They seemed to understand each other in ways that made Gladys believe she had finally found the happiness she deserved. But appearances, as Gladys would tragically discover, can be deceiving. Beneath his polished surface lay the heart of a man consumed by control, jealousy, and rage. What began as a relationship filled with promise would unravel into a nightmare, culminating in an unspeakable act of violence that no one could have predicted. Gladys Ricart was born on December 19, 1960 in a small province of the Dominican Republic. Gladys was the youngest of 3 children. Her family, though not wealthy, was loving and hardworking. She was raised alongside her older sister Norma and her brother Juan. From a young age, her parents instilled in her the value of education and the dream of a better future, one far removed from the poverty and limitations of their homeland. Norma, the eldest, had already taken the leap. In the mid-1970s, she moved to New York City, found work, and began building a new life. She became a beacon of hope for her family back in the Dominican Republic, and Gladys idolized her. Her greatest ambition was to follow in her sister's footsteps and pursue the same dream, a fresh start in America. But life rarely follows a straight path. In her teens, Gladys fell in love with a boy from her school. At 17, she became pregnant. When she broke the news, her boyfriend abruptly disappeared from her life, leaving her alone with the responsibility. Yet Gladys made a courageous choice. She decided to keep the baby, naming her son Davis, and her family supported her wholeheartedly. Though the relationship with her first love had ended in heartbreak, her love for her child became her greatest motivation. Living at home with her parents, who helped care for Davis, Gladys worked tirelessly. Her goal was clear: to save enough money to join Norma in the United States and start anew. It would take 4 years of sacrifice and determination to achieve that dream, but when the time came, she left her son behind temporarily, trusting her parents to care for him until she could afford to bring him with her. In the summer of 1982, Gladys arrived in New York City. She moved in with Norma and her family, settling into their Manhattan apartment. The transition was not easy. She was in a country where she barely spoke the language and had no professional qualifications that could land her a good-paying job. But Gladys was determined to succeed. She immediately began taking English classes and accepted any work that came her way. She washed dishes in restaurants at night, handed out flyers during the day, and took on shifts at supermarkets whenever she could. Though the work was hard, Gladys never lost sight of her dreams. As soon as her English improved, she enrolled in college, continuing to juggle multiple jobs to pay her way through. Her perseverance paid off when she landed her first accounting job at a New York company. That was just the beginning. After graduating from college, she enrolled in a prestigious university to study economics, determined to rise even higher. By 1985, Gladys Ricart's life had taken a positive and promising turn. She had secured a stable, well-paying job, and though she was still pursuing her degree at the university, she was already standing on her own 2 feet. She rented her own apartment in a good neighborhood and had begun saving for a home of her own. The greatest joy for her at that moment was that she was finally able to bring her son Davis from the Dominican Republic to live with her. He had been living with her parents up until then, but now, with her career and finances in good shape, Gladys could reunite her family under one roof. This was a significant step forward, a reward for years of hard work and perseverance. After earning her degree, Gladys's career soared. She became the chief accountant of a major travel company based in Manhattan, a role that showcased her skills and established her as an indispensable employee. Her dedication to her craft and her relentless drive for success earned her a sterling reputation. By this time, she had become fluent in English, even managing to erase most traces of her accent, further solidifying her position in a competitive professional environment. A few years later, Gladys's achievements extended beyond her career. With the support of her sister Norma, she helped bring their brother Juan, along with his wife, 3 daughters, and their elderly parents, to New York. It was a time of family reunification and celebration. Juan, too, settled into the city, found a good job, and, like his sisters, began building a better life. Their children attended prestigious schools, and the entire family was flourishing. They were closely knit, frequently gathering for dinners and celebrations, and always ready to support one another in times of need. The Ricart family, now all living in Manhattan, enjoyed the fruits of their labor, having built a life far better than any of them had imagined back in the Dominican Republic. By the early 1990s, Gladys had achieved nearly everything she had ever dreamed of. She had a prestigious job, a comfortable apartment, a son who was thriving in school, and her family nearby, each living a secure and fulfilling life. She had worked hard, climbed the career ladder, and ensured her loved ones were well taken care of. The only piece missing from her otherwise perfect life was personal happiness, a loving relationship that could complete the picture she had worked so hard to create. Having been burned by her first relationship in her youth, Gladys approached romance with caution. Her early experience, being left alone with a child and no financial support, had shaped her into a careful, selective woman when it came to matters of the heart. She had always prioritized her son and her career, striving to create a stable and comfortable life for Davis. Friends and colleagues often saw her as a career-driven woman, assuming she would sacrifice her personal life for continued professional success. She rarely dated, spending most of her time focused on work or with her family. However, deep down, Gladys never stopped hoping for love. She dreamed of meeting a kind, dependable man, of building a family, and of finally allowing herself the happiness she had long postponed. One warm autumn morning, while commuting to work on the subway, Gladys's life took an unexpected turn. It was on this ride that she met the man she believed could finally fulfill her dreams. He was Agustin Garcia, a 41-year-old who seemed perfect in every way. Their encounter began innocently enough. Agustin offered her his seat, a small but gallant gesture that caught her attention. When another seat became available, he sat next to her, and their conversation began. Agustin was charming, witty, and personable. He complimented Gladys with sincerity, and his humor made her smile. As they talked, they discovered a shared history. Like her, Agustin had also immigrated from the Dominican Republic. This connection seemed like fate, a sign that they were meant to meet. By the time the subway reached their stop, they had exchanged phone numbers, and Gladys couldn't help but feel that something special had begun. Their casual conversation that morning was the spark that ignited what she believed would be a lasting romance. From that moment on, their relationship blossomed quickly. Agustin's charisma and attentiveness made Gladys feel special and appreciated in a way she hadn't experienced in years. He showered her with attention, making her believe that after all the years of hard work and sacrifice, she had finally found the partner she deserved. What she didn't know was that behind Agustin's charm lay a darkness she could never have anticipated, a darkness that would soon reveal itself in the most tragic way possible. Agustin Garcia, like Gladys, was born in the Dominican Republic, but his early life was marked by hardship and struggle. Born in February 1951, he grew up in a poor neighborhood, never knowing his father and losing his mother at a young age. After her death, Agustin realized that he had to take drastic steps to change the course of his life. In the mid-1970s, he made the bold decision to immigrate to the United States, determined to build a better future for himself. Arriving with little more than ambition, Agustin worked tirelessly to carve out a place for himself in this foreign land. He took on menial jobs, learned English, and eventually began to build a name for himself. Garcia's personal experiences shaped his empathetic approach to life. Having struggled to establish himself in America, he became deeply invested in helping other immigrants facing similar challenges. He remembered all too well the isolation, the language barriers, and the difficulty of finding work. By the early 1980s, Agustin had become a prominent figure within New York's Dominican community. He helped countless people by offering assistance in securing jobs, housing, and language lessons, all while growing his own business into a thriving enterprise. His company, based in the heart of Manhattan, was successful, and his personal life reflected his professional achievements. He owned a luxurious two-story house in an affluent neighborhood, drove expensive cars, and even had a yacht. Despite his material success, Garcia remained grounded, using his wealth and influence to uplift his fellow countrymen. By 1985, Agustin's influence had expanded well beyond the community. He became the head of the Dominican Chamber of Commerce in New York, a role that allowed him to have an even broader impact. In addition to his business ventures, Garcia was involved in numerous charitable activities. He spearheaded initiatives that led to the opening of schools, kindergartens, English language training centers, and employment programs for immigrants. His reputation as a generous, kind-hearted man was well known. Always ready to listen, he never turned away anyone who came to him for help. He even used his own funds to help families in need and treated many community members like family. Agustin was, in every sense, a self-made man. He had been married but was now divorced, raising his two sons alone after a bitter custody battle. Despite the personal challenges he faced, Agustin remained outwardly charming and personable. He was admired for his business acumen, community leadership, and apparent kindness. It was out of sheer coincidence that Garcia, who normally never used public transport, found himself on the subway that fateful day. His car was being repaired, and with Manhattan traffic at a standstill, the subway was his only option to get to an important meeting on time. It was there that he first laid eyes on Gladys Ricart, and in that brief moment, his life would take a dramatic turn. Gladys, with her poised and elegant demeanor, caught Agustin's attention immediately. She stood out, a graceful figure in an expensive business suit, a picture of success and confidence. Agustin, always assertive and quick to act, took the opportunity to introduce himself. Their initial conversation was light and casual, but it quickly became clear that they had much in common. Both were immigrants who had overcome immense odds to succeed in the United States, and both had struggled in their personal lives, raising children as single parents after failed relationships. By the time the subway ride ended, Agustin had asked for her phone number and given her his business card, on which he had scribbled not only his office contact but also his personal home number, a gesture that indicated how seriously he took this chance meeting. Throughout the rest of that day, Agustin couldn't stop thinking about the beautiful stranger he had met. That evening, as soon as he got home, he called her. To his delight, Gladys answered, and they continued their conversation. He invited her to dinner at an upscale restaurant that weekend, and without hesitation, she accepted. Their first date confirmed everything Gladys had sensed about Agustin. He appeared to be the perfect gentleman, kind, attentive, and full of charm. He listened intently to her stories, complimented her on her intelligence and grace, and treated her with respect and admiration. To Gladys, it seemed as though fate had finally brought her the man she had long hoped for. Agustin was generous, educated, and thoughtful, qualities she deeply valued. Beyond their shared heritage, they seemed to have similar outlooks on life, and their conversations flowed easily. Agustin presented himself as the ideal partner. He was intelligent, well-established, and had a seemingly kind heart. He showered Gladys with attention, treating her with a gallantry that she had rarely experienced before. He took her to fine restaurants, bought her thoughtful gifts, and always made her feel special. Their backgrounds, both having immigrated from the Dominican Republic and built successful lives in a foreign country, gave them an instant bond. The fact that both had endured failed relationships and were now raising children alone seemed like further proof that they were meant to be together. But as the relationship progressed, what had started as a fairy tale romance soon began to take a darker turn. Agustin, For all his outward charm and generosity, harbored a deep possessiveness and a volatile temper, qualities that would ultimately surface in devastating ways. To Gladys, however, these warning signs were subtle, hidden behind the veneer of a man who appeared to be everything she had ever wanted. Little did she know that the man she thought was her perfect match would soon become her worst nightmare. The relationship between Ricard and Garcia unfolded with breathtaking speed. They spoke on the phone every day, shared intimate moments, and soon became inseparable, spending all their free time together. Agustin played the role of the perfect suitor, showering Gladys with extravagant gifts, from luxurious bouquets of flowers to expensive jewelry. He took her to high-end restaurants, where the finest cuisine was always paired with compliments that left her blushing. Agustin also won over Gladys's family, quickly establishing a rapport with her relatives and even her son, Davis. For the first time in a long while, Gladys's family felt that she had finally found the happiness she deserved. Garcia's own children seemed to accept her well, and a year into their relationship, Agustin made a significant move. He asked her to move in with him. For Gladys, this was a dream come true. She and Davis packed up and moved out of their modest apartment, stepping into Agustin's massive house, a symbol of their newfound life together. But what initially seemed like a fairy tale quickly unraveled into something much darker. Agustin's sons, who were older than Davis, began tormenting him. They bullied him relentlessly, provoking fights and creating a hostile environment. Despite the obvious tension and the fact that his sons were always the aggressors, Agustin consistently sided with them, ignoring the damage being done to Davis. At the time, more than ever, Gladys dreamed of marriage. She confided in her family about her hopes that Agustin would propose soon and that they would become a proper family. She urged her son to avoid conflict with Garcia's children, and although Davis tried his best, the constant harassment made it impossible for him to live in peace. Gladys could see the toll it was taking on her son, who was on the cusp of adolescence. She feared that the toxic environment in the house would leave lasting emotional scars on him. Determined to protect Davis, she decided to confront Agustin about the escalating situation. But to her dismay, he brushed off her concerns. He believed the children would resolve their issues on their own and saw no reason to intervene. Faced with Agustin's refusal to acknowledge the problem, Gladys made the difficult decision to move out for the sake of her son's well-being. Agustin, surprisingly, accepted this without much protest. He insisted that he did not want their relationship to end, and even rented a spacious house for her and Davis. However, living apart began to change the dynamics between them. Slowly, Agustin's once charming persona began to crumble, revealing a far more controlling side. Not long after they started living separately, Agustin's behavior took a sharp turn toward the possessive. He demanded constant contact, insisting that Gladys be reachable at all times. If he called her at home or work, she had to answer immediately. His once gentle demeanor morphed into something more insidious as he began closely monitoring her every move. He scrutinized her friendships, kept a close eye on her social interactions, and became increasingly suspicious of her behavior. Agustin's interrogations started innocently enough. He'd ask about her day, who she had spoken to, where she had been. But soon, his questions became more invasive and accusatory. Despite these troubling signs, the outward appearance of their relationship remained much the same. Agustin still lavished Gladys with gifts, continued to take her to elegant restaurants, and accompanied her on vacations. To her family, Agustin was practically a member of the family, and Gladys herself held on to the hope that he would eventually propose. She clung to the idea that their relationship would return to what it had once been, believing that the man she had fallen in love with would soon make her his wife. But as the months turned into years, it became clear that Agustin had no intention of marrying her. Instead, he tightened his grip, becoming a full-fledged tyrant in their relationship. He restricted Gladys's freedom, trying to control her every action. Whenever she attempted to assert herself, he manipulated the situation, making her feel guilty for even the smallest infractions. Garcia's once gallant exterior had completely faded, leaving behind a man who was obsessive, possessive, and domineering. Gladys, still clinging to the hope of a marriage proposal, found herself trapped in a toxic relationship with a man who had no plans to give her the future she longed for. When Gladys finally confronted Agustin about marriage, his response crushed her hopes. He coldly stated that marriage was not part of his future plans, explaining that after his failed first marriage, he had no intention of tying the knot again. Gladys had invested years into their relationship, so she clung to the hope that Agustin would change his mind. However, over time, it became increasingly clear that he had no such intentions. Worse yet, rumors of his infidelity began to surface. Agustin was having affairs, and although he tried to keep them secret, they eventually came to light. To the public, he presented Gladys as his wife, but behind her back, he was unfaithful. When Gladys finally discovered his cheating, she decided to break up with him. But when she attempted to leave, Agustin's reaction was terrifying. In a fit of rage, he pulled out a gun and threatened to kill her if she ever left him. It was in that chilling moment that she realized the true extent of the danger she was in. She had spent years with a man who was capable of monstrous violence, and the fear of what he might do kept her trapped for another agonizing year. It wasn't until November 1998, after catching him in the act of cheating in his office, that she found the strength to end the relationship for good. This time, she told him unequivocally that it was over. Agustin didn't try to deny his infidelity, nor did he believe that Gladys would truly walk away. But just days after their final confrontation, she moved out of the house he had rented for her, seeking safety and distance. She informed her family of the breakup, hoping to finally be free of him. Initially, Agustin refused to accept the breakup. He made desperate attempts to win her back, bombarding her with phone calls and trying to arrange meetings. He left gifts, flowers, and even a Bible at her doorstep, all laced with declarations of love. But Gladys was resolute. She had no interest in rekindling their toxic relationship and made it clear she had moved on. However, what she didn't know was that Agustin's obsession had only deepened. He began stalking her, watching her from afar, hiding in the shadows of her new life. In February 1999, Gladys met a man named James Preston at a restaurant. James, like her, was an accountant, but he also pursued his passion for music in his free time. There was an immediate connection between them, and soon they began dating. For the first time in a long while, Gladys felt happy, and she thought she had finally found someone who could give her the kind of love she deserved. But Agustin, still watching her closely, became more dangerous with each passing day. One evening, while James and Gladys were at her house, they heard a knock on the door. Agustin stood there, demanding to speak with her alone. When she refused and asked him to leave, he flew into a rage, hurling stones at her windows. Frightened, Gladys called the police, but in her effort to avoid escalating the situation, she chose not to press charges. This decision would later prove to be a grave mistake. As the months passed, her new relationship flourished. By the summer of 1999, James proposed to Gladys, and she joyfully accepted. They planned a beautiful wedding for September 26th and were set to leave for a honeymoon in Hawaii, where they would celebrate their love on a paradise island. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing, with friends and family invited to share in their joy. It seemed like nothing could stand in the way of Gladys's long-awaited happiness. But 2 weeks before the wedding, on September 12th, Gladys had an unsettling encounter. She was shopping at a mall when she unexpectedly ran into Agustin. He approached her as though nothing had changed, slipping his arm around her waist as if they were still together. His behavior was possessive, and the casual way he acted, despite their tumultuous past, sent chills down her spine. Knowing how unpredictable Agustin could be, Gladys didn't resist, fearing what might happen if she angered him in public. Instead, she feigned politeness, quickly excused herself, and left the mall under the pretense of needing to take care of an urgent matter. In reality, She was running from a man who still saw her as his possession. Agustine's presence lingered like a dark cloud over her, even as she prepared for her new life with James. It was a reminder that despite her best efforts to escape, Agustine was not ready to let her go, no matter the cost. On what should have been the happiest day of her life, Gladys Ricard was radiant in her dream wedding dress. Her home in Ridgefield was filled with the laughter of friends and family, all gathered to witness her long-awaited union with James Preston. The groom was already waiting at the church, while Gladys made her final preparations, surrounded by her loved ones. Photographers and videographers were on hand to capture every moment of her special day, with footage intended for a future family archive. But instead of becoming a cherished memory, those images were later shown in a courtroom as evidence in a murder trial. Around 3 in the afternoon, an ominous car driven by Agustín Garcia, Gladys's former boyfriend, arrived on the street outside her house. Despite the tumultuous end of their relationship, Agustín calmly stepped out of the car and approached the house. Gladys's brother, Juan, intercepted him at the entrance, demanding he leave. But Garcia insisted he had been invited, and Juan, unsure of how to proceed, reluctantly let him pass. Inside the house, Gladys was joyfully handing bouquets to her nieces, unaware of the looming danger. Suddenly, Agustín entered the room. Terrified, he opened his briefcase, took out a pistol, and without hesitation fired 3 shots at point-blank range. The first bullet struck her shoulder, the second pierced her chest, and the third hit her head, ensuring she had no chance of survival. The vibrant bride, full of hope and love, was dead before help could arrive. The medics who were called could do nothing but confirm her death. Agustín made no attempt to flee. He stood there, calm, as if resigned to his fate. He was promptly arrested at the scene, showing no remorse, only a cold readiness to confess to the heinous act he had just committed. During his initial interrogation, Agustín told a bizarre and twisted version of events. He claimed he had no idea Gladys was getting married that day. In his distorted reality, he was still in a relationship with her. He referred to their recent encounter at the mall where they had walked together, albeit awkwardly, implying that they were still a couple. According to his story, he was driving by her house as he often did, and upon seeing the crowd and numerous parked cars, decided to stop and see what was happening. When he realized that Gladys, the woman he still considered his partner, was marrying another man, he said he simply wanted to talk to her. However, according to him, things took a violent turn when Gladys's brother Juan and her son Davis attacked him in the living room. He claimed that in self-defense he pulled out his gun, and in the chaos, the bullets accidentally hit Gladys. In a final, far-fetched detail, Garcia insisted he had no memory of actually firing the shots. When his lawyers arrived, Garcia immediately retracted this statement. From that point on, he refused to cooperate with investigators, opting for silence. The prosecution gave him an opportunity to plead guilty and receive a lighter sentence, but Agustín refused, showing no signs of remorse or willingness to admit guilt. The case soon attracted widespread attention, and Agustín's legal team, determined to secure a victory, sought to transform the narrative. His defense hired some of the best and most high-profile human rights lawyers, determined to shift the blame away from Garcia and portray him as a victim of circumstance. Knowing that the best defense is often a strong offense, the legal team devised a strategy to paint Agustín as the wronged party. A man whose actions were the result of a misunderstanding and emotional turmoil rather than premeditated malice. The trial was set for October 2001, giving the defense ample time to strategize and build their case. The businessman, once regarded as a respectable man, saw his carefully crafted image crumble overnight. Now, in the public's eyes, he was no longer an admired figure, but a monster. Restoring his tarnished reputation seemed like an almost impossible task. Undeterred, his legal team sprang into action, not just in the courtroom but also in the court of public opinion. They wasted no time in working with the press, conducting interviews and holding press conferences, trying to shift the narrative in their client's favor. The defense mounted a multifaceted attack, portraying Gladys as a manipulative, gold-digging woman who had allegedly broken Agustine's heart. According to their version of events, the defendant had been a victim of betrayal, driven to desperation by Gladys's deceit. They claimed that Garcia only grabbed the gun in self-defense after being attacked by the victim's brother and son. To further influence public opinion, the defense relied heavily on accusations from human rights activists who cast Gladys in an unflattering light. Supposedly, while still involved with Garcia, Gladys had been carrying on an affair with James, all the while planning a secret wedding behind Agustine's back. She had allegedly continued to accept money and lavish gifts from Garcia even as she prepared to marry someone else. According to this narrative, the murder was not a premeditated crime, but a tragic instance of manslaughter, committed in the heat of passion and fueled by the supposed attack from Juan and Davis. As these claims made their way through the media, public opinion began to shift. Many now saw Gladys as the villain of the story, a woman who had cruelly deceived Agustine and abused his generosity. The defense's portrayal of events was so effective that the public started to believe Gladys had, in some twisted way, brought her fate upon herself. The victim's family fought to defend her honor, but it seemed that Agustine's legal team had won the battle for the hearts and minds of the public. However, the case took a devastating turn for the defense when a crucial piece of evidence surfaced: a videotape capturing the murder. On what should have been the happiest day of Gladys's life, a wedding photographer and videographer had been hired to document the celebration. Cameras had been set up throughout the house, including one in the living room, where it recorded every moment of the bride's final preparations. This same camera also captured the brutal killing in horrifying detail. The footage clearly showed Garcia, consumed by rage, approaching the bride with calculated intent. He calmly retrieved a gun from his briefcase and fired 3 shots at her at point-blank range. His actions were deliberate, and contrary to the defense's claims, there were no signs of Juan or Davis anywhere near him. The footage destroyed the defense's argument, revealing that Garcia had approached his victim with clear intent to kill, not in self-defense, but in cold blood. Once the existence of this videotape came to light, Garcia's attorneys scrambled to prevent it from being shown to the jury. They argued that it was too prejudicial and would make it impossible for their client to receive a fair trial. However, the judge, after reviewing the tape, ruled that it was highly relevant evidence and allowed it to be entered into the case file. The trial for Gladys Ricart's murder commenced in the fall of 2001. Family members and friends of the victim testified that Agustine had been stalking Gladys after their breakup, determined to make her life miserable. Despite his increasingly erratic behavior, she had never reported him to the police, a tragic decision that ultimately cost her her life. Those close to her described her as too kind-hearted, too forgiving, to see him as the threat he had become. The damning evidence, of course, was the videotape, which left no room for doubt. Every detail of the cold-blooded murder was captured on film, and the jury could not ignore the calculated manner in which Garcia carried out the killing. On February 1, 2002, the jury found Garcia guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Though he attempted to appeal the verdict, citing temporary insanity brought on by the shock of Gladys's wedding, his plea fell on deaf ears.
Female stabbed in the chest. She is unconscious.
The defendant now said that the defendant struggled with the victim for control of the knife, and that she then wound up stabbing.
Today we will look at a tragic story that will shock you, so watch this video until the end. In a small town where whispers travel faster than the wind, a tragedy unfolded that would forever alter the lives of 2 inseparable sisters. They were known for their unbreakable bond, a connection so deep that it seemed nothing could sever it. Yet, on one fateful night, the unthinkable happened. The act of violence shattered their world, leaving behind a trail of unimaginable grief. As events unfolded, the question remained, what could have happened to lead to such a cruel and twisted end? An important event occurred in the American city of Camden, New Jersey, on January 8, 1992. Amanda and Anna Ramirez, twin sisters, entered the world a matter of minutes apart. The sisters had a unique bond from the beginning that only got stronger with time. Amanda and Anna were raised in a warm, loving environment by the big Ramirez family. In an effort to improve their lot in life, their parents, immigrants from Puerto Rico, had created a solid, close-knit family. They were able to preserve the coziness and cohesion of their home in spite of the challenges they encountered while pursuing the American dream. The girls were not the only children in this family, but the twins' striking likeness and unbreakable bond set them apart from the others. The sisters were like two sides of a whole from a very young age. They loved playing with the same toys, dressed alike, and spending all of their free time together. It appeared as though Amanda and Anna could sense each other's feelings and moods without really speaking. They swiftly moved their arguments and make their relationship as best friends. The sisters even shared a crib during their early months, as if they could not sleep apart, as their parents remembered with fondness. Observing Amanda and Anna during those years left one in awe of how strong their bond was. Like two branches growing from a single tree, they reached out to one another in search of support and motivation. Their parents and the whole family were very proud of their special girls, and were happy that they had each other in this vast and sometimes cruel world. The sisters' parents claimed that it looks like they spoke to each other in a secret language of their own. They had a strange ability to read each other's minds at times, acting and wanting things before the other did. It was incomprehensible, like a telepathic connection that was exclusive to the two of them. Teachers were astounded by Amanda and Anna's ability to finish each other's answers as if they were a single person, even at school. This amazing sisterhood created wonder, but it also caused concern. Would it impede the girls' personal growth? Without their partner's unwavering presence, could they manage to find their own place in the world? Together, Amanda and Anna seemed to have endless happiness, and it seemed that way would never change. They supported each other's endeavors, celebrated each other's victories, commiserated over setbacks, and revealed their most private ambitions. The sisters could not envision their lives apart, because they were two parts of a whole. Amanda and Anna grew up in a loving, supportive, and united environment. The big Ramirez family did all they could to provide the girls a happy, carefree upbringing. The sisters got into mischief, played together, and went to family gatherings together. They took great pleasure in wearing alike and tricking people by posing as one another. Their parents grinned as they related the times when, not even, they could distinguish between their own daughters. In the Ramirez home, it was a source of joy and laughter, as well as a true test for all. The twin sisters were close at school as well. They were on par in almost every subject and frequently completed each other's homework. Teachers did not chastise Amanda and Anna too much, though, because they behaved well and had good scores. Friends from school said Amanda and Anna worked well together and were always willing to lend a hand to one another. The sisters were able to slip notes with answers even during exams. It seemed as though they could read each other's minds, which was amazing. The twins developed into happy, gentle, and compassionate young ladies. They lighted up any gathering and interacted with people with ease. Amanda and Anna had aspirations of becoming nurses in order to aid the ill and sick. Their parents promised to do whatever it took to fulfill their daughters' ambitions, even though they did not have the money for both of them to attend college. Mrs. Ramirez described, her eyes welling with sorrow, how she and her husband toiled long and hard to allow Amanda and Anna to go to college. They were prepared to give up anything to ensure their children's happiness because it was their common dream. Friends and classmates of Amanda and Anna frequently commented on their generosity, honesty, and readiness to help. The females were the real gems of school life. They were always grinning, hospitable, and willing to make friends. They took part in everything from school plays to charity fairs with great enthusiasm. Nothing appeared to be able to spoil their joyful upbringing and carefree teens. However, life also presents challenges that must be addressed in addition to happiness and victories. For Amanda and Anna, their father's illness was a difficulty. The family was in terrible shape after Mr. Ramirez became seriously ill. However, the sisters never gave up and helped one another through those difficult times. In an effort to support their mother and lessen their father's pain, they became more closer as a family. This time turned into a real test of their tenacity as a sisterhood and their spiritual fortitude. Amanda and Anna put up a lot of overtime to provide for the family. They never voiced complaints despite repeatedly depriving themselves. The girls realized that supporting their parents and giving them the fortitude to battle their illness was what mattered most. Amanda and Anna used to spend all of their leisure time at their sick father's bedside. They talked to him about their good childhood memories, read him books, and told him amusing anecdotes from school. The girls thought their love and attention would aid in their father's healing. Despite a protracted and difficult road to recovery, Mr. Ramirez was able to resume his life. This experience enhanced Amanda and Anna's sisterly relationship even more. They understood that their unity was their greatest asset and that by working together they could overcome any adversity. The girls promised to stand by each other through thick and thin, and fate would again try the strength of their bond. The girls' carefree upbringing did not last long. They had to mature. The first to wed and give birth to 3 amazing kids was Anna. She developed into a devoted mother who gave her children her all. Anna started her career as a licensed nurse and finished her nursing courses at the same time. Anna was well liked by both patients and co-workers for her warmth, friendliness, and readiness to assist whenever needed. Anna was a genuine angel in the hospital, according to her co-workers, who also described her as tireless, kind, and smiling all the time. She had a talent for finding the ideal words of consolation and encouragement to uplift each patient's spirits. Anna put a lot of effort into giving her children a promising future. She never failed to find time for her enormous family, especially her adored sister Amanda, despite her hectic schedule. Chatting with Amanda almost every day, Anna visited her parents, sisters, and brothers frequently. The girls would support one another and share stories over the phone for hours on end. Their unique link seemed to only get stronger with time, supporting the sisters through every adversity, despite distance and life's problems. Amanda was not in a rush to tie the knot, unlike her sister. After finishing her nursing education, she started working at the same hospital as Anna. Once more, the girls were together as they had been as kids, now working together to save lives. Ramirez sisters were a true guardian angel team of nurses who could heal any patient quickly. Similar to Anna, Amanda was always willing to help, encourage with a kind word and smile from the heart. Co-workers appreciated their expertise and dedication, while patients loved their warmth and compassion. Amanda would frequently go see her sister in her spare time to spend time with Anna and play with her nieces and nephews. The sisters might talk about their childhood, dreams, and recollections of their youth for hours while sipping coffee in the kitchen. They shared one another's sorrows and disappointments and laughed till they cried while telling outrageous stories from the past. They treasured these times of sisterly intimacy the most because that is when they felt most content and dependent upon each other. Because Amanda aspired to be a mother herself and get married and have kids of her own, she actively assisted Anna in taking care of her children. Anna's eldest daughter's formative years were beneath the vigilant supervision of her devoted mother and devoted aunt, Amanda. As a result, the sisters were able to maintain their unique link and grow closer. Amanda saw her time spent looking after her niece as a priceless preparation for motherhood. She played, fed, bathed, and cooed over the child with joy. Anna quipped that she could have 10 children with such a wonderful assistance. Needing help from her twin to manage her 3 small children and job, Anna was a young mother who was struggling to fulfill her responsibilities. Amanda made an effort to support others by lending a shoulder when things were hard. Every weekend she went to see her sister, pitched in with housekeeping duties, and prepared delectable dinners so Anna could sleep. The sisters went shopping, took the kids on strolls in parks, and talked about their girly secrets. During these times, their little but powerful family seemed to be the center of the world, and they experienced genuine happiness and oneness. Amanda eventually found love and became pregnant without warning. Both sisters were truly taken aback, but they were confident in their ability to overcome any obstacle as a team. It was now Anna's turn to provide her sister all of her support and guidance. Together, the girls got ready for the arrival of Amanda's firstborn. They dreamed of what he would be like, set up the nursery, and spent hours choosing baby things. Pregnancy was difficult for Amanda. She experienced extreme morning sickness and edema. However, Anna was always there to support and uplift her sister. She made sure Amanda ate right and did not overdo it, watched over her health, and drove her to all of her doctor's appointments. Anna saw how important it was for Amanda to feel needed and safe during this trying time. And then at last came the much-anticipated day. The world welcomed little Alex, Amanda's firstborn and Anna's nephew. The little bundle, who so much resembled them both, captivated the sisters' attention. They bathed and soothed the infant to sleep. Alex turned into one more example of their unbreakable link, an additional thread binding their destiny to one another. Amanda's transformation as a mother made her more sensible and responsible. She now had an even greater understanding of her sister's joys and fears. The females could talk about childhood mischief, share parenting advice, and daydream about their children's futures for hours on end. They were confident that their kids will become as devoted and close-knit as they were. The kids matured over time, and Amanda and Anna's sisterly bond only got stronger. They remained one other's rock, sharing happiness and sorrows. Their children shared their mother's love and commitment to family, growing up with each other as siblings. The sisters managed to have some fun together, even with the rigors of motherhood. Amanda and Anna enjoyed going out and having a good time with their pals. Together, they frequented clubs frequently and danced till dawn. The twins exuded a beautiful air of unity, enthusiasm, and wild energy among their group. The Ramirez sisters laughed at inner jokes that only they could share and seemed to read each other's minds, comprehending every partially said word. Amanda and Anna went out to party once more on June 22, 2019. They were both 27 years old at the time, with Amanda having just given birth to her first baby and struggling with postpartum depression while Anna was caring for 3 little children. The sisters made the decision to let go and dance like it was the good old days, despite their obligations and tiredness. The girls first enjoyed themselves in a club with pals. The group left for their cousin's house at midnight. The sisters carried on laughing, drinking, and taking careless selfies there. The happy twins were seen posing with drinks in hand in one picture that was shared on social media at around 5 in the morning. The caption said that they were experiencing good vibes. Nobody could have predicted at the time that this photo would end up being the sisters' last portrait. Tragic events occurred at around 5:30 a.m. At that very moment, Anna was stabbed deeply in the chest and fell to the sidewalk outside her cousin's house, where she bled. Amanda placed a panicked 911 call at 5:40. The frightened woman screamed that her sister was hurt and bleeding heavily as she begged for assistance. Anna was still alive when the police and medics came, but she quickly passed out from the shock and blood loss. The sufferer was transported in an ambulance to the closest hospital. After fighting to save Anna's life, the doctors declared her dead at 6:20 a.m. It was a fatal, serious stab wound. In the arms of medical personnel, the mother of 3 had died. The Ramirez family, as well as everyone who knew Anna, was truly shocked by this unfortunate tragedy. The terrible news of her passing swept through the small town like wildfire. Nobody could believe this happy, kind woman had departed from this life at such a young age, and for such an unexplained reason. The greatest shock of all for Amanda was the loss of her sister. Her closest relative, with whom she had shared life, was gone in an instant. The knowledge that Anna was permanently gone seemed like a nightmare from which there was no way out, and the sorrow of this loss was immense. However, the bitter truth was that Anna had indeed passed away, irrevocably altering the lives of those who loved her. The Ramirez family would now need to figure out how to raise her kids without her, continue to live without her. Many questions remained after Anna's death. What had occurred on that fateful evening? Who could have wanted this good-hearted woman to suffer harm? Was it a deliberate crime or an accident? The police and detectives working on the investigation made it their main goal to find the answers that were still missing. But regardless of the official verdict, Anna will always be a devoted daughter, sister, mother, and friend to her loved ones. Her memories would bring comfort at the coldest moments, and her radiant spirit would always remain in their hearts. The cops had a lot of questions about Amanda's actions. Her hands had fresh scratches from a fight with a knife, and her clothes was stained with her dead sister's blood. Furthermore, neighbors reported hearing a heated dispute between the sisters, but not any male sounds. These particulars forced investigators to focus especially on Amanda and her potential role in this tragedy. Amanda first insisted that she had only cut herself accidentally and would not allow the police into her cousin's flat. However, blood-stained kitchen knife in the sink and bloody tracks on the floor led investigators to believe there was a complicated case of domestic violence. The woman was brought in for interrogation, during which she must to defend her actions and recollect all of the events of that fatal evening. Amanda acted erratic and unclear during questioning. She would break down in tears and beg for everyone to believe that she was innocent, but then she would suddenly stop talking and refuse to respond to inquiries. She said she was drunk and did not remember much. But she and her sister had argued about something insignificant before she went into a blackout. Such evidence served to confirm the suspicions of the detectives regarding Amanda's involvement in the murder. It was acknowledged by other party-goers that the sisters had argued before Anna walked off by herself, but nobody knew exactly what had transpired next or how she had been fatally injured. The owners of the apartment where the party was held owned the knife that was used to kill the woman, according to forensic evidence. The relative of the sisters, however, insisted he was not involved in the crime, and no fingerprints were discovered. Detectives faced a real task when they took on this complex case. All the evidence, on the one hand, suggested that Anna's killer was a member of her close circle, perhaps even her own sister. However, the reason behind such a heinous crime was still unknown. Ultimately, the Ramirez sisters were known for their unbreakable bond and sincere affection for one another. Who would wish to break that unique link, and why? The Ramirez family attempted to come to terms with the terrible accident while the investigation carried on. They were unable to comprehend Amanda purposely hurting her own family members while still providing her with unwavering support. However, they were plagued by unsolved problems and persistent uncertainties. Why was Amanda behaving in such an odd way? What had truly happened that evening, and would they ever know the whole story behind Anna's death? Friends and family of Anna were plagued by these questions. They knew that the truth would be necessary in order for them to move on, say goodbye to Anna, and find comfort. But they also realized that the answers would prove to be too painful and surprising. Amanda first attempted to persuade the police that she had just discovered her sister, who was already hurt, on the sidewalk. She said she went to Anna and tried to stem the blood flow, getting covered in blood all over herself in the process. She fled to the flat to wait for the paramedics, terrified. However, this version did not match the defensive cuts on Amanda's hands well, leading detectives to believe she was concealing something. They started going over her testimony in further detail. The woman altered her story as soon as she saw no one was buying it. She now said that after they had been drinking at their cousin's house, she and Anna had suddenly gotten into a fight, which even resulted in Anna slapping her. After that, Amanda stayed behind to be with their relative, and Anna headed home. She stepped outdoors 45 minutes later and saw her sister's bloody body. Even if this story made more sense, there were still a lot of unanswered questions. Investigators made an effort to ascertain the precise nature of the sisters' argument and whether it served as the catalyst for a murder. However, Amanda continued to change her story, becoming lost in the specifics and unable to articulate what had transpired. Occasionally, she would say she could not recollect what started the argument, but would then abruptly recall small taunts that allegedly turned into a brawl. The investigators' suspicions regarding Amanda's involvement in the crime were heightened by her inconsistent and contradictory evidence. They had a suspicion that Amanda was hiding something, possibly in an attempt to protect herself or someone else, but it was difficult to prove given the lack of concrete proof and Amanda's inconsistent assertions. Speaking with more witnesses did not help either. Although the sister's cousin acknowledged that they had argued, she asserted that she had not heard or seen anything unusual. Loud yells and scuffling sounds were heard by the neighbors, but nobody was able to determine who left the building and when. The investigators came to a standstill. All the evidence suggested a crime of passion, but the circumstances and motive were still unclear, and Amanda's evasive remarks made matters worse. The Ramirez family was grieving their horrible misfortune in the meantime. They were in a frenzied search for explanations, unable to comprehend Anna's death. Though they continued to harbor suspicions, Amanda's parents and family attempted to support her and believed she was innocent. But what actually transpired that night? It turned into a real ordeal for Amanda. She was forced to deal with the weight of suspicion and guilt on a daily basis, endure awkward questioning from relatives and detectives, and repeatedly relive the horrifying moment she claimed to have found her sister. The woman remained detached, but her own emotions and memories became more jumbled and plagued her. Can Amanda be not guilty? Could the police and detectives find the true murderer? And what would the truth about Anna's passing cost the Ramirez family? Finally, as far as Amanda could remember, she gave detectives a conclusive account of what happened in September 2019. She said she had had too much to drink that evening and could not recall why she and her sister had argued. Then she described how something in her thoughts seemed to short-circuit when she was slapped. She lost consciousness and awoke only when she was standing over a bleeding Anna, holding a knife. Amanda was so terrified that she threw the knife into the sink and dialed 911. With bitter tears, the woman begged to be believed that she had not wished her little sister to die. Although her story sounded genuine, it also left investigators with a lot of unanswered issues. The detectives deduced that Amanda was concealing something. After 27 years of the perfect sisterly friendship, it was unlikely that a simple argument could turn into such a violent assault. Major suspicion was also aroused by those inexplicable memory lapses. Investigators surmised that Amanda had long-standing animosity towards her sister, which manifested itself in a knife-wielding drunken outburst. They started closely analyzing the sister's past in an attempt to identify potential conflict triggers. The woman's deliberate purpose to kill was evident from the one exact hit to Anna's heart, and her attempt to place the blame on an unidentified attacker made matters worse. The sisters' significant disputes were refuted by the sisters' family. Although their relative acknowledged witnessing the altercation, he acknowledged being unaware of the reason behind the twins' disagreement. Investigators realized it would be hard to piece together the truth without this crucial information. Amanda's story of wrestling with her sister over the knife appeared to be supported by the defensive wounds on her hands. But why not head back to the flat right away and ask for an ambulance? Detectives trying to piece together what happened that tragic night were plagued by these unanswered questions. Just when the investigation had come to a standstill, an anonymous contact to the police hotline was received. The unidentified caller said that Anna's own sister had killed her out of jealousy. The victim's aunt subsequently confirmed this account, claiming Amanda had been surreptitiously having an affair with Anna's husband while taking advantage of her striking resemblance to her twin. Anna was reportedly furious and accused her sister of malicious betrayal when she discovered this relationship. Detectives were forced to approach the case from a different perspective after this shocking discovery caused quite a stir. The aunt was adamant that she had heard Amanda bragging to a friend about her adulterous tryst with Anna's husband. She also added sarcastically that her dimwit sister was still unaware of it. This would account for Amanda's peculiar behavior. Had the woman really wooed her brother-in-law, she probably would not want to acknowledge committing such a disgraceful conduct. In order to verify this shocking theory, investigators started examining the interpersonal interactions inside the Ramirez family in greater detail. All of Anna's other family members, acquaintances, and particularly her husband, on the other hand, deny any suspicions of a romantic triangle. The relatives found the rumors of infidelity ridiculous and out of character, totally at odds with the shining reputation of their family. They had no idea how Amanda could have betrayed her sister, who had been her longtime companion. The younger sister of Amanda and Anna, Monica, 19, testified under oath that the twins were bonded by a strong spiritual bond and could not have deceived each other in that manner. According to the girl's testimony, Amanda had her own long-term partner with whom she planned to marry, so there was no need for her to have an affair with her brother-in-law. The police investigation documents, as the Ramirez family claimed, amounted to slander and baseless conjecture for them. They found it inconceivable that Amanda could have committed such a heinous crime. The investigators were put in a challenging situation. The love triangle driven by jealousy made sense on the one hand, and it might even account for Amanda's strange behavior. On the other hand, this story was flatly refuted by the loved one's evidence. Furthermore, there was no concrete proof of an affair to be found. Charges of planned murder were made on far too tenuous of a foundation, an anonymous call and hearsay. Amanda's defense, meanwhile, emphasized Amanda's innocence. Her lawyers contended that all the evidence used against their client was based only on circumstantial inconsistencies. They implored the court to rely only on facts and common reason, not to be seduced by provocations and speculation. Amanda and Anna, the defenders emphasized, were best friends who would never betray each other, not merely sisters. As the matter gained more attention, it came under heavy public and media investigation. Different people held different opinions about Amanda. While some supported the Ramirez family's situation and thought she was innocent, others insisted that she was guilty and called for a severe sentence. For those involved, this trial turned into a real hardship, but especially for Amanda, who was battling not just to keep her freedom but also to protect her sister's reputation and integrity. In September 2019, Amanda and the prosecutors reached a plea agreement. She said that she had accidentally stabbed her sister with a knife in a fit of rage while suffering from postpartum depression and alcoholism. The woman claimed she had no evil intentions and that she deeply regretted what she had done because she had effectively destroyed two lives, her own and the life of her cherished sister. For everyone who had followed this high-profile case, her confession was shocking. Amanda sobbed bitterly during the trial, calling herself the vilest creature and appealing for an opportunity to atone while begging God and everyone in attendance for forgiveness. She declared that from now on, till the rest of her days, she would bear the cross of regret and the anguish of irreversible loss. She said the perpetual pangs of remorse were far worse than the court's penalty. Although her remarks affected the people in the courtroom, they were unable to bring back the dead Anna. Although Amanda expressed genuine regret, the judge declared Anna's murder to be an intentional act. After serving 5 years of her 6-year sentence, she may be eligible for parole. When Amanda heard the sentence, she started crying uncontrollably and begged everyone to pardon her most serious transgression. She realized that the shame she would experience for the rest of her life was much worse than this penalty. Following the trial, the victim's family said they accepted Amanda's contrition and had no animosity against her. While the rest of the family agreed to support the imprisoned woman's little daughter until her release, Amanda and Anna's mother claimed custody of her grandkids. The family thought Amanda deserved a second opportunity at atonement because she had truly repented. For the benefit of the kids and Anna's memory, they believed that in due course they could forgive her and mend family connections. Even though it is hard to acknowledge, drinking and uncontrollably high emotions destroyed 2 young women's lives, destroyed 2 homes, and robbed children of a mother's love. Police, lawyers, and media are still debating the central mystery. What exactly set off that fateful outburst of wrath? There was no clear solution offered by the official investigation. While Anna's family believes she was an innocent victim of unfortunate events, the police believe Anna was the victim of a jealous person who planned and carried out the murder. It is now hard to confirm or deny Amanda and her brother-in-law had a covert relationship. The woman vehemently claims that there was any kind of hidden agenda behind the altercation, and Anna's husband flatly denies that anything like this could have happened. It appears that this secret will be buried with Anna forever. One terrible fact, however, endures in spite of all the conjecture. A young woman killed her 27-year-old twin sister with a single knife stroke and now deeply regrets what she did. It will take a long time for the grieving Ramirez family to get over what happened on that terrible night in June of 2019. They will need to raise Anna's kids, learn to live with their memories and this grief, and start over without her. This tragic event teaches us all a sobering lesson about how fleeting human life is, how easily it can be destroyed in one tragic moment, and that neither love nor family can protect us from terrible mistakes. For the rest of her life, Amanda will have to live with the sorrow and regret she feels for her crime. Beyond simply being a criminal history, Amanda and Anna Ramirez's narrative is a genuine human drama about 2 destroyed lives, love turned hateful, and regret that might eventually result in atonement. There is no greater agony than losing a loved one, especially when that loss is the consequence of a deadly error by someone close to you. Even though justice has been done and the guilty have been punished, this tragedy will continue to ache in the hearts of everyone who know it for a very long time.